Hi, and welcome back to Hudson Appliance for another episode of Wicked Good Food. My name is Matt Williams, and I'll be your host today. I got home from work, and I felt like I wanted to drink. I was sitting out on the back deck. I said, you know what, I want a margarita. And I had all the stuff to make a fantastic margarita, so that ended up being the inspiration for this show. Is later on, we're going to make an outstanding but very basic margarita, but it kind of drove me towards some Mexican-inspired dishes, and we're going to make essentially my ultimate taco, what would make me the happiest as a taco. One of the things I love in a taco is refried beans. We're going to make some homemade refried beans with a bunch of bacon fat in them and a little bit of lime juice and some cumin and chicken stock. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to teach you how to make your own taco seasoning. You don't need to go to the supermarket and buy those packages of taco seasoning because we're going to make that ourselves. I'm also going to make a salsa. I'm not a huge fan of raw tomatoes. That's just my personal taste. So we're going to make a salsa with no tomatoes. It's going to be corn and fennel and onions and some other goodies. So we're going to go ahead and get started. In this pan over here, I cooked some bacon earlier, and I have a little bit of bacon fat. That's just warming up slowly, and I'm going to dice up an onion. So this onion is going to be used, I'm going to use half of it for the refried beans, and the other half is going to go in the salsa. But both of them I want to be pretty small dice. So if you remember from previous episodes, we're going to use the shape of the onion to our advantage as we cut this. Now if this particular salsa isn't your thing or you like other stuff, if you've been a loyal follower, you've seen the guacamole we made tableside and some of the other salsas we've made. So there's a bunch of other recipes around. But I'm going to make cuts that are really close to each other, but being very careful, not to cut my finger off, but being very careful not to put the tip of my knife past the end of this onion because it should all hold together like that. Then I can spin it, turn it perpendicular. I would make perpendicular cuts like this. We get a nice fine dice. So I love a nice, fresh, crunchy salsa. I love the corn. I've got some nice corn. It's not local corn yet. It's a little too early for that. But it's fresh corn off the cob. I tried a little piece. If you're at the supermarket, and I know you see people that go digging through ears of corn and looking for the best one. My personal thing is I don't do that. All the corn from one bin of corn is going to more or less be from the same field. So what I do is I'll open up one and I taste it. I break off one little ear of corn and I'll taste it. Is it sweet enough? And if it's the sweetness that I'm looking for, or if it's the flavor I'm looking for, I'll go ahead and get a bunch. I'll make sure they feel kind of heavy for their weight, but I'm not overly concerned if they're a little bit, if the top there's some kernels that aren't quite there. I'm going to use half of that onion in there. The other half I'm going to reserve. What happens is, each one of these little fibers that comes out is connected to one kernel of corn. And it's incredible the way it works, but in order for that to get pollinated, it actually travels down through the center of one of these and it starts at the bottom. And these little kernels all get fertilized. Sometimes it doesn't go all the way to the top. So sometimes some of the ones at the top aren't quite done. It doesn't mean they're bad or they've gone bad. I mean, obviously if they're moldy and this is all black, then that's another story. But it just means it didn't get fully fertilized and the rest of the corn is totally fine. So I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit on the refried beans, or the onions and bacon fat at this point. And then I'm going to take my other onions, actually, and throw them into this bowl. Now, I like raw onions, but sometimes they're a little intense. I love the crunch. I love that fresh onion flavor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually salt these onions, and I think I've done this before with you guys. I'm going to salt them, because it's essentially nothing you're going to cook with onions that you're not going to add salt in. What this is going to do is it's going to help to release some of those sulfuric compounds that make you cry when you do the onions, so that way they're not as intense. Now you can take it a step more, which we're not going to do for this, but you can actually rinse these off in some cold water after you let them sit. But we're going to let them be, and we're going to leave that salt in there because we're going to end up using salt in our salsa. So let's go back to our corn here. So nice fresh corn. I find the easiest way to shuck corn is to just grab about half of it, pull one side down, and then just pull the rest of it right off and snap it right off like that. I got really good at shucking corn. After my freshman year of college, I worked at this little place in Nantucket. And as soon as I got there in the morning, I would have to go through, with two other guys, two other interns, but we'd have to go through 3 cases of corn. If it was busy, we'd have to do upwards of 5 cases of corn, and we would shuck. We were crazy shuckers. But we'll shuck some more of this here. Now, a lot of times people don't think of using corn on the cob raw, but it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with corn on the cob. I mean, you think about the crunch that you get from canned corn and stuff. That doesn't happen from cooking it. What we're going to do is I'm going to hold it up like this. I'm going to remove some more of these strings and cut right down. Now, there's kind of a delicate balance here. You don't want to cut too deep or you'll get into the cob, and that gets crunchy, really. But if you don't go deep enough, you don't get the whole kernel, and you're wasting this beautiful corn. Now, one thing that a chef taught me a long time ago was that you're not done once you go like that. So all the wonderful flavor of the corn is inside here. And if you take your knife and hold it, once again, perpendicular to the cob and go like that and scrape, and you get this fantastic paste that's actually just filled with corn flavor. All right, so I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit more on these. And you can see there's probably 3 to 4 tablespoons of bacon fat in there, so it's a pretty good amount. I'm going to go ahead and add the beans. And so what we're going to do is let these cook low and slow for a good long while. Now, if we don't add any extra liquid to this, it's going to burn. So we're going to add a little bit of chicken broth. That's just a store-bought chicken broth. If you make your own, by all means, use your own. Now, we're going to let that just hang out for a while. We're going to season it some more later, but we're just going to let it cook. We'll come back to our salsa. Another reason I love corn, even if I'm making a traditional tomato salsa, I love having corn in there for that blast of sweetness and the bright yellow color. Can't beat it. If you're ever making corn chowder, make sure you do this move here. And another little trick is if you take your corn cobs and you simmer them in some milk before you make your chowder, then take out the corn cobs, and the milk that you add to your chowder will have a wonderful corn flavor. All right, so I'm going to add some corn to this. And the other thing we're going to add that's a little different to our salsa is going to be some fennel or anise. So what I'm going to do first is remove these parts. Just move them over here for now. Now, that part can be used. It can be sliced really thin. The farther you get up on it, it gets a little woody. So you want to use the lower parts. But all these bits here, the fennel fronds, all these little bits that look like dill actually taste wonderful. Have a great anise, licorice type flavor. But now I'm going to take this bulb of fennel and I'm going to cut it right in half, right down the middle. And we'll put this for another project because we won't need all that. But then you can see that we get into the core. Now on the core, I'm going to use the tip of my knife and essentially make a little triangle and remove the entire core like that. Now this, I'm going to cut almost like I was cutting an onion because once again, this has a bunch of layers in it, and I want to cut this pretty fine. And you can see that it has all these different layers in it. Now I'm going to turn this and give this a quick chop. Fennel is a fantastic vegetable that I don't think is used as often as it could be. It's great raw, it's great cooked. Braised fennel is just a fantastic dish that complements so many other things. So I'm going to throw our fennel in. Then for some more color, I'm going to put a red pepper in. Take off the bottom and the top. This is all perfectly usable. We can take this and dice it up. Take out the green part. The stem is no good. But all the rest of this is all good pepper, except the part I just threw on the floor. And so for this salsa, I want everything to be more or less the same size. So I'm going to try to think about the size of my corn kernels. And that's what kind of directed the size of the onions I did. It's directing what size the peppers are. Some peppers, and I want to do a little more. And so there's a little trick when you're doing the peppers. You can see straight through it. You can see where the membranes are. Take the tip of your knife and cut somewhere where there's no membrane. Then just take your knife and essentially lay the pepper out flat like this. Once you get to this point, don't cut towards your hand. And you can remove and you get what's a beautiful couple pieces of pepper here. I'm going to take this and go ahead and dice this up. Now our refried beans have come to a simmer, so we're going to let those cook. We're going to let them, I don't want them to be as mushy as like a canned refried bean, but I do want them to dry out and to have, I don't want the beans to really regain or retain much of their shape. So I can go right in there. So the other thing we're going to add to this, besides some seasonings, and we'll adjust the seasonings after we taste it, is some fresh lime juice. So I cut the lime in half, and we're going to use a bunch of limes in our margaritas too. Give it a little squeeze, and then I'm going to take my spoon, stick it in there, and just turn like this. If you don't have a juicer, and actually this is better than a lot of the juicers that are out there, you can totally hollow out your lime. And we're going to do, I like lime, so we're going to do the juice of a whole lime here. All right, so I'm going to take a break for a minute. I'm going to put in corn from 3 more cobs of corn, but you don't need to watch me do that. But I like it to be a lot of corn. I'm going to clean up a little bit, and then we'll continue on. So I cleaned up a little bit. I added 3 more stalks of corn into our salsa. Last thing we're going to do to finish our salsa is we're going to add some cilantro, some fresh cilantro. So I'm just going to pull some leaves off. Now, cilantro is one of those things that it seems like people either love it or hate it, and I've kind of gone through phases of each way. I know my dad definitely hates it. It's a vile weed, he would say. That's all right, though. But we're going to use some in our salsa. We're not going to use too much. Now, I'm going to be kind of gentle with this. I don't want to tear it up. I don't want to chop it up too much. So I'm just going to quickly go through it with my knife. And then looking at this, you can see it needs something. It needs a little splash of green. So cilantro is how we're going to do it. If you don't like cilantro and you want a little green, add a little chopped parsley to it. Add some green pepper to it. You know, it's, as I've said before, it's just food and it's your food, so make it yours. All right, that should be enough. I'm just going to give this a quick chop here. Throw that right in there. And we'll come back and stir that in a minute. Then if we want to look over here to our refried beans. So now some more of that liquid has evaporated. Now I'm going to take, and I'm actually going to use this slotted spoon and mash some of these beans a little bit. You could use a potato masher too. This is going to release an awful lot of starch into this liquid, which is going to make it get thicker, and thicker than it was considerably. So you need to pay attention so that you don't burn. If you need to add a little more liquid, add a little more liquid. And this is about as mashed up as I want to get it. I like that there's a couple beans that are almost whole. I'm going to add a little bit more broth. But I like to have a little acid in there. Because it's relatively fatty, we need some more acid. Now I'm going to add in a lime. If you don't like lime or you don't have lime, you know, a little bit of vinegar will work just fine. Vinegar is a good acid. I'm going to start with half of a lime. And if some of the pulp gets in there, good. That's fine with me. Now we're going to let that keep cooking. Actually give it one more stir here. We can season it with a little bit of salt. But be careful because we used a little bacon fat. You don't want to salt it too much unless you've tasted it. We're going to add a little bit of pepper. And we'll let that cook. Now we're going to make some homemade taco seasoning. The taco seasoning you buy in the store is it's what I grew up on. It's how I thought tacos were supposed to be made. But by making it yourself, you have so much more flexibility. You can make it less salty. I find the stuff in the store a little too salty sometimes. But you can also adjust it however you like. If you don't like onion or you like it spicy or whatever, you can play with it. So the basic recipe we're going to use is we're going to start with salt. Put about a teaspoon of salt in. Use some pepper. We're going to put about half a teaspoon. Some onion powder. We're going to put a little less than a teaspoon or so. And some garlic powder. Do about half a teaspoon. Garlic powder is good, but I find it can get very, very bitter. So you need to be careful that it doesn't get too bitter. It doesn't look like much like taco seasoning yet. It does have a little corn in there. Now we're going to add some oregano. And I'm going to add about a teaspoon of oregano. And then cumin. If you're not familiar with cumin, smell it. This is what reminds me of tacos. This is what reminds me of that Mexican-inspired food. So I'm going to add about a teaspoon of that, then a couple teaspoons of chili powder. And I'm going to mix this up a bit. I'll use this knife because that's what I have sitting right here. And you want to mix it well. And then taste it. So I taste the salt. I get the pepper right away. It's very good. It's pretty well balanced, but taste it. It's not the best tasting thing in the world because it's meant to season something else. It's going to be intense. But think about all the flavors that you put in there and try to get all those flavors out of this. If not, you can adjust your seasoning a little bit. You could add a little bit of cayenne if you want it a little bit hotter, a little bit of dried chipotle. All right, or chipotle chili powder. So we're going to start to get ready for our beef. So I'm going to warm up this pan. I'm going to go ahead and stir our salsa up. And this corn's fantastic. Has a very nice crunch to it. So we're going to start out making our taco beef with a little bit of bacon fat. Just because, well, why not, right? And we're going to add some onion to this and some tomato. Like I said, I'm not a huge tomato fan, huge raw tomato fan, but I do enjoy cooked tomatoes. And I said, we're making my perfect tacos. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to take this, I'll cut it in quarters, move this out of the way. Remove the seeds. And I'm going to give it a quick dice. And I'm not worried that it's perfect. I don't care about uniformity. These are all going to cook down to almost nothing. But it's going to add another element of flavor and a depth of flavor to our finished taco meat. So it's a kind of a rough chop. Now my meat's in the fridge. I'm going to grab that out of the fridge. All right, and you know what? I'll use this spoon. I won't put it back in there though. So we're going to take a couple minutes, let this brown up. We'll come back before I season it so you can see me season it up. I'm going to add a little bit of onion to this as well. And then we're almost getting time to get our drink on and start making our margarita. All right, we've cleaned up a little bit. Our beef is almost brown here. So I'm going to go ahead and add our tomatoes. I'm going to let these cook right into that. And add some of our taco seasoning. One thing to be careful of if you make a big batch of this and you let it sit or you shake it up, the oregano is going to want to rise to the top because it's bigger than the rest. Just make sure you give it a little stir. I don't know if this is going to be enough. That's what I'm going to guess. But I'm going to let it cook down a little bit and then we'll taste it. Now back over to our refried beans. I've turned the heat way down on this. You can see right in here that there's some whole beans, but most of it's all mashed up. The last thing I want to season this with is a little bit of cumin. Just kind of mix that around like so. And I'm going to shut this heat completely off, and I want to take a little taste. That's really good. You get some smokiness from the bacon, a little bit of acid from the lime, but not so much you're like that's super limey. The beans have a nice texture to them. They're not totally mush. Oh, that's fantastic. Very good. I'll leave that there for another snack later. We'll let this keep cooking. Now, for my taco, I like cheddar cheese. I like really sharp cheddar cheese. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, instead of grate it, I'm going to peel it with a peeler, like this, so that I can put big, honking pieces of cheese on. And this is a great thing to do with like Parmesan cheese too, to put it on top of a Caesar salad or any sort of a salad. And it's quick and easy, especially if you can't find a grater. All right, that'll be enough of that for my taco at least. We'll let Arthur grate his own. No, just kidding. All right, then the last thing we're going to do here before we go to another break is we're going to season up some sour cream. So I have some sour cream, and I'm going to load it up with hot sauce. I love sour cream. I'm a big, big fan of sour cream, and I like hot sauce. But hot sauce, to me, is a little bit thin for my taco. I find it drips off. If I mix it with the sour cream, it does two things. I really like the creaminess. That's like the combination of buffalo wings, where you have that spicy buffalo wing with the blue cheese dressing. That's what we have here. We have the creaminess and the heat. That's pretty good. Actually, that's perfect. All right, we're going to take another quick break. I'm going to finish cooking up the meat. Our beans are just about done. I need to get the rest of our stuff ready for our tacos, and we'll get Arthur up here and make some margaritas. All right, so our taco beef is all done. I put some of it in a bowl right here. Our refried beans I put into a bowl. Here's our finished salsa. We've got our finished sauce, and our cheese is hiding back here. So what we're going to do is go ahead and build a couple tacos for Arthur and I and spread it around, right on the flour tortilla. You want to try to get it all the way to the edges. A real thin coat, but you want to get it from edge to edge. All right, we'll do that on both of them. All right. There we go. Now, I'm going to build the actual tacos. Now for me, I like cheese on the bottom. So I'm going to put a little bit of a layer of cheese on the bottom because that's going to help to kind of insulate the bottom of the taco shell so it doesn't get soggy from any liquid that's in the meat. Do that. I'm going to put in a scoop of our meat. Now obviously, they're your tacos. You do whatever you want to your tacos. I'll stand that right there. Same thing with this guy. Then I love cheese. So, stand him right there. We're going to put some more cheese on top. Like that. And then why not a little bit more meat? Okay. Now, we'll take and drizzle some of our sauce right over the top. Then we're going to finish it with some of our salsa. And then those are ready for Arthur and I. But Arthur and I don't want to make fools of ourselves when we eat it on camera, so we're going to make a little appetizer portions. And this is a great thing you can do here too. So I'm going to take a little bit of refried beans and drop them into some of these chips that are shaped like little bowls. Then I'm going to put one little piece of cheese on top. And then a little dollop of our sauce. And just a couple little pieces of salsa on top. So I'm going to take a couple minutes. I'm going to juice the rest of our limes for our margaritas, and I'll make up some more of these. We'll get Arthur up here and eat some more food. Hey, Arthur.
Welcome back.
Thanks again for having me here at Hudson Appliance.
One thing I want to say, Matt, is I want to remind all the audience out there, okay, that they can sign up, go to hudsonappliance.com and sign up for your cooking classes. I know the last one you had was on an induction coil range, and it was a success. We'd like to have another one. So what do we have today?
So we actually only have one thing to taste, but there's a lot that went into it as far as food-wise, but we're going to make a drink real quick. We're going to make our margarita.
All right.
All right. I'll do one with a salted rim, one without, but I'm going to take a lime, and I'm just going to rub it on the rim of my glass here, and then stick it right in the salt. Like so.
Okay.
All right. Then we're going to take, and we're going to ice the glasses. My hands are clean, I promise.
Okay.
Then here in the pitcher, we've got some fresh lime juice and just a little bit of water. And I'm going to add, for some sweetness, I'm going to add agave nectar. Now, agave nectar is actually made from cactus, the same type of cactus that's used to make tequila. So I want to mix this around real well. There's a lighter and a darker one. For the sake of this, I'm using a lighter one, just for the color of it, because I want to keep some of that color. So I have some really nice tequila here. So I'm going to pour in exactly that much. And then I'm going to add some of this, which is an orange liqueur. And the orange and the lime work really well together. It's about 2 parts tequila, 1 part the orange liqueur. Give that a good stir. And then we're just going to pour it right over the rocks. All right, so the other thing we made that took most of our time today were these tacos. I wanted my ultimate taco. I had a craving for tacos the other day, so this is what it ended up with. This is a soft tortilla. We made some homemade refried beans, which we layered in between.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some onion in there, a little bit of bacon fat, a lot of bacon fat, a little bit of lime juice, a little bit of cumin, and then there's some cheddar cheese. We actually used a vegetable peeler, so it's nice big hunks. I like a bigger hunk of cheddar cheese.
All right.
And then a homemade salsa. We learned how to make a homemade taco seasoning mix. That you could expand that if you wanted to make 3 or 4 cups of it and you only used a little bit, you can just throw that in your cupboard in an airtight container and it'll last for months. Okay. But what we did was, and the other thing we did was some sour cream, but put a little hot sauce in it. Okay. As a sauce. And so instead of you and I taking a big bite out of one of those and making a mess.
Making a laughing fool of ourselves,
exactly.
Basically.
I figured we would do one of these. But you can give one of these a whirl if you want.
All right. Now that's wicked good.